Yep. All right. Well. All right. Well, I just thought I'd give everyone an update. There's two really good articles that I handed out that I thought got it right. You know, this was just a fantastic opinion piece in the Detroit News. This person, I don't know him, Michael Wrights. He's really an excellent opinion columnist. And I thought it'd be good for you guys to know what this says, because I think it got it right. A headline, Michigan only enacted 74 laws in 2025, so what? And I just thought this was really well done. And I think it's a good story for everyone to read, just to kind of get a feel for the other important work of a legislative body. You know, Hall is right, according to this very credible opinion columnist in the Detroit News. Hall is right. The purpose of a legislature is not to maximize output, it's to govern well. There may be a reason to pass more bills, but it isn't the reason people are complaining about. And this, there are a couple paragraphs in here. The purpose of the legislature is not to pass laws, Hall said. Hall pointed to the House's other activities, such as conducting oversight hearings, scrutinizing waste in the budget, and cutting costly programs. Nobody looks to see if any of these laws are working, he said. And as he says, Hall is right. So this is a very, very good, this is a great part too. Even with just 74 laws signed, Michigan lawmakers tackled big issues in 2025. They reformed paid sick leave and tipped wage laws, ended a major business subsidy program in favor of road funding, and improved earmark transparency. Really good. So hopefully everyone reads that closely. I think that'll help get to the truth. And this was a really good one too, from the Mackinac Center, which is probably the most credible think tank in Michigan. James Hohman, I know he testifies in front of a lot of legislative committees, and he gives a very good kind of summary of the roads funding debate. And even myself, I forgot some of these things, but I mean, he's probably one of the foremost experts on roads and transportation issues and fiscal issues. And he says, give credit where due on the roads deal. Whitmer gets 20%. That's what he says here. And in a lot of the stories, they give her 100% of the credit, but this expert, James Hohman, says she only deserves 20% of the credit. And he kind of gives the history of the road funding debate. You know, Whitmer proposes a tax increase, a 45-cent a gallon tax increase. The legislature, not one Democrat has the guts to introduce it. Then she doesn't do anything for a long time. He points out in 2023, Governor Whitmer had a chance to act when Democrats took majorities in both the Michigan House and Senate. She no longer had Republican-led chambers to stymie her proposals, yet she did not advocate any tax hikes for roads, and both budgets enacted during the Democratic trifecta had little extra money for transportation. I think that's right on, very sharp from him. And Republicans took a majority in the House in the 2024 election and set out to do something that had been discussed for a long time, change the tax code as it relates to fuel. He goes through House Speaker Matt Hall insisted on getting a road funding package as part of a budget deal. Democrats said that they would do this if the package included a tax hike. Any tax hike, Republicans agreed to raise marijuana taxes. And he points out the deal will increase road funding by $2 billion when phased in, and only $400 million will come from the marijuana tax hikes. Exempting fuel purchases from sales tax might have meant less funding for education, but lawmakers found more money for schools as well. Essentially, after 15 years of debate on road funding, it looks like lawmakers finally made it to the goal. The question is how much credit goes to Whitmer? She asked for more spending on roads and didn't veto an increase when the Republican budget delivered it. It was her preference to raise taxes to pay for roads rather than use the state existing resources. It was Hall's preference to fix roads without raising taxes. Both officials compromised. 80% of the money came without tax hikes, so 20% of the credit seems appropriate for Whitmer. So hopefully we take this analysis, very good analysis, and it shows who really deserves the credit for the roads deal. I just couldn't have been more pleased with Friday. I think Friday was probably, one of the best days I've had as speaker. It might be the best day as speaker. We saw the consensus revenue estimating conference, and I've been trying to explain this for months in this room. I really see part of this, I'm trying to help you guys do your jobs. I'm educating you. I'm telling you things that no one else will tell you from all these meetings that we have. And when we made the budget deal, and I want to be clear, this is why the Republicans won the budget deal. It isn't just because we get 80% of the credit on the roads and the fact that we got 80% our way, Whitmer got 20% her way on the roads deal. The reason the Republicans won this last budget fight is because while the Democrats, particularly the Senate Democrats, were so focused on the pork spending, their entire process was driven by the pork spending. So I'd sit in a room with the ultimate Lansing insider, Sarah Anthony, and with Winnie Brinks, and they would be talking about the pork spending. And I'm looking at this and saying, okay, you guys are going to get some of your one-time short-term pork spending, because what we're looking at is what is the trajectory of spending for the next 3 years. And that was how we approached this budget deal. And what we saw was if we spent the one-time money the way we did, coupled with dedicating permanently all that money to roads, and then with no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, what I saw in all of our projections was it would force a cut to spending in the next two budgets. Okay, and when the consensus revenue estimating conference came out, it finally showed you guys that. Now, I've been telling you this week after week, but now the consensus revenue estimating conference showed it to everybody. And when you look at the comments, and I give Treasurer Eubanks credit for being honest about this, you look at what Treasurer Eubanks said. Number one, she says that the revenue estimating conference tells us that Michigan's economy is stable. Okay, so right out the gate, that takes away the Democrat point that it's Trump's fault, right? Because you'd expect them to blame Trump. Rachel Eubanks came right out and said the economy is stable, all right? Secondly, I want to point this out, when the consensus revenue estimating conference occurred, this professor from the University of Michigan got up who'd been doing this research project and said, we had to revise our estimates. The tariffs are not costing Michigan jobs. They're actually creating 4,800 new jobs in auto manufacturing in Michigan. That's their estimate. And they showed that they're building all kinds of new American cars. It's actually increasing the number of cars that are purchased. It's creating new demand for American cars by tens of thousands, okay? So he's pointing out they had to revise their numbers to say, look, the tariffs are creating jobs, 4,800 automotive manufacturing jobs in Michigan, and they're creating demand for automotive jobs or automotive cars from Michigan and domestic. And then they pointed out a lot of the cost increase in the prices of cars are the foreign cars. Okay, that's the whole point of the tariffs, is you make the foreign cars more expensive and you create a demand for the domestic cars. University of Michigan in the CREC said that's exactly what's happening, so we'll set aside that for a second. Secondly, what Rachel Eubanks, the Democrat treasurer under Whitmer, what she said is that we knew this was coming. She said, when we agreed to no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, and when we saw that we were permanently dedicating that money to roads, we knew this was going to happen with the numbers. okay? So it's not just me saying it, it's Rachel Eubanks. And there were comments made by Jen Flood very similar. So that's the whole point. That is why we won the budget deal, because now we have to cut, and the number is $1.2 billion out of the next budget. So the next budget has to be $1.2 billion smaller than the previous one, which we all know was smaller than the one before. Now, the way we get to the 1.2 billion is 800 million from departments. That's just clear. 800 million from departments. And in budget speak, they call that ongoing. All right? But the other part, the 500 million, they call that one time. Okay? And that's all the pork spending. So everything in that budget that was one time is automatically gone, because they don't consider that the budget. They consider that one time. So the 500 million is gone. That's all the pork. It's the arts and culture grants. A lot of that is gone. Then you got to cut 800 million more. And that's the baseline budget. Those are the cuts that are going to be made. And it totals 1.2 billion. And so as we go through that, that's going to have to come from departments, and it's going to have to be permanent. Now, the good news is we did this last year, right? When we dedicated 800 million from departments, we permanently cut that waste, fraud, and abuse, and we permanently dedicated it to roads. We did this. We cut $800 million. When we did that, that also is why we have to cut another 1.2 billion this year, because they're not getting that money into the general fund. And by the way, these guys are the only people are these budget people and Democrats that make it sound like a bad thing when you're giving tax money back to the taxpayers. We're returning money back to the taxpayers through no tax on tip, overtime, and Social Security. We're giving you more money to put into your pockets, but the bureaucrats are all upset because that's going to cost money from the government. But we were proud to give that money back to the taxpayers. So you put those things together, that's exactly what happened. Then what they say is that the next year, year two, which would be 28? The 28 budget, they're projecting another $900 million cut, which would put you at 2.1 billion. So, in 2 years, this budget's got to be $2.1 billion smaller based on the consensus revenue estimating conference, and that is exactly what we did. When we were going through this budget, the Democrats and Whitmer administration tried every way possible, instead of doing the $800 million in cuts permanently from the budget and dedicating it to roads, to come up with one-time gimmicks so this wouldn't happen. And as we went through that negotiation, we forced them to do real cuts. And that's why we're in a position where the next 2 years we're going to be able to cut the budget even more. So we are accomplishing our goal of being more efficient, of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and making this budget smaller. So I couldn't have been happier with the consensus revenue estimating conference. It was exactly what I expected. It was exactly the deal that I made. And hopefully people now are going to report on it because they're going to see the big picture. We were working with some Democrats that were just looking this far in front of them, just at the pork. I mean, the Democrats, they can't see past the pork. I've never seen anything like it. It is the biggest vulnerability. You dangle a little pork in front of them, they don't see anything else, and we totally outmaneuvered them in the negotiation, and the taxpayers are gonna benefit because you're gonna have more efficient and effective government and better value for your dollars. Now, I have already seen some rhetoric from Ultimate Lansing insider Sarah Anthony and some of the other Democrats that they think that we should be raising taxes to keep government spending the same, or we should be borrowing or taking money out of the rainy day fund. I oppose those efforts. House Republicans oppose those efforts. The Whitmer administration is admitting that this was the deal we made. We made this deal on purpose. We said, we are going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse from government, and we're going to permanently dedicate it to roads. It's a higher priority than what it was being spent on. And then we're going to do no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. That is why we have a budget shortfall. Policy choices we made. So to bring in a rainy day fund, after the fact because of the choices we made is ridiculous. We made this decision, it was a deal we made, and we're going to follow through with the rest of the cuts over the next 2 years. We're very happy to do so. So that I was thrilled with that because I finally was proven right. Then we saw what happens when a fair judge presides over a case. We saw Judge Godola come out in the Court of Claims and say, House Republicans are very likely to prevail in this case, and he issued a preliminary injunction and said, stop the spending. Just like I said all along, the legislature created this law. They have every right to use it. And Dana Nessel had this cooked up political opinion. She conspired with Sarah Anthony in the governor's office to break the law. We saw it was a very unlawful order. And thank goodness a fair judge, Judge Godola, heard the arguments and quickly put a stop to it. That'll now give us the opportunity to get an accounting of the spending. I think what was really important in that hearing, and I appreciate those of you in the press that watched it, I thought it was very telling if you watched it. What was very clear, the Whitmer administration has no idea how much money they've spent, how much money they've committed, and how much money they haven't, okay? And that's a symptom of how out of control this slush fund spending has become. You know, it used to be of much more limited use. Now there's so much of it going on, they don't have a clue. You heard him in the argument, the Democrat attorney say, well, it could be 50% committed, 70% committed, we don't know. And Judge Godola asked him, well, if it's already committed, then why are you asking it to be work projected? Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be asking the legislature to work project money that's already committed. And they did not have a good answer for that. So I think the question is, right, I mean, why doesn't the Whitmer administration have a better handle on this spending? I mean, we know that they're getting $800 million a year of interest off of this money. It's crazy. When Rick Snyder was governor, it was maybe $4 or $5 million. Now it's $800 million a year of interest they're making off the taxpayers through these slush funds. There's so much of it, they're not tracking it very well. I mean, you know, the fiscal year ends on 9/30, and they send this stuff to us in November, and they have no idea what they're doing. And here we are in February, and they still have no idea. So my hope is that, you know, Judge Godola, or, you know, the judge will force them to, Judge Godola will force them to provide an accounting. Show us how much money have they spent and how much money have they not spent. What's committed and what's not. Give us an accurate accounting. And my hope is moving forward that we'll get some permanent change here where the administration is forced through the law to give an accurate accounting so everyone understands at the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, how much money is being spent, how much money is committed or encumbered, and how much isn't. And the burden shouldn't be on the legislature, right? I mean, when they give us hundreds of millions of dollars and they have no idea where it's going, what it's being spent on, how much is spent, how much isn't, and a lot of it's waste, fraud, and abuse, and then they say, our records aren't very good, our accounting isn't very good, just rubber stamp it? No way. We need to get the spending under control, and we're doing that. And you see we're doing it very well. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in there. And we see, you know, the story that was written on RX Kids, and that's a great example of waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, they didn't spend $18 million of the 20 they were given. We have a huge, and this is something the media won't say, but is 100% true. And I've been telling you, just like I've been telling you about the budget shortfalls, I am telling you, and you're eventually going to realize I'm right, there is a TANF funding shortfall, okay? And by cutting TANF funds for experimental programs like RX Kids that aren't using the money, we're actually going to be able to repurpose that money in a deal, in a supplemental, and we're going to put it into the other existing TANF programs, the other cash assistance programs that have been around for years that are underwater. We're going to be able to fund them. This is not a choice between RX Kids or pocketing the money. This is a choice between the experimental cash assistance program that isn't spending their money and the ones that are spending the money, and we have a $3 or $4 million shortfall and we need to fund it. And that should come out of TANF dollars. It shouldn't come out of general fund dollars. When you have $18 million of TANF dollars they're not spending, then you start looking into it. And I give Beth credit for her reporting. I think more people should be looking into RX Kids. I've been looking into RX Kids, and there is a lot more there, which I'll be sharing with you in the coming weeks. But Beth did a great job of laying kind of the foundation here of looking at all the administrative overhead. It's very high. This very shady New York group that's involved, and this guy is a very left-wing guy. Coaching people, paying and coaching people to give interviews in the media, which, by the way, they use to get more funding. So they pay these people, they coach them on how to speak to the media, and then they use that to get more money for the program. It's very, looking into the voting habits of these people. This is a very curious thing. I mean, this is a left-wing group of people studying voting habits, and I think it's for helping Democrats. And so, and then, I give Beth credit for reporting about my quote that points out the illegal aliens get this. I mean, what this RX Kids is a way to get illegal aliens to have children and locate in Michigan, which then puts the illegal alien families to the front of the line in immigration. We have done our best to root out the other illegal alien welfare programs. We see the rental subsidies, the other things through the Office of Global Michigan, the free legal aid that they were giving for people to fight their deportations. Now we're seeing RX Kids, and what these guys try to say, the RX Kids, is, and I appreciate MERS reporting this as well. This doctor from RX Kids says, well, we give the state money in TANF to the non-illegal aliens, and that gives us the resources to give the non-TANF money to the illegal aliens. So the taxpayer dollars are propping up so that the philanthropic dollars go to illegals. But the next batch of money they got, and by the way, they didn't spend 18 of their 20 million. Now they're going to get 270 million. That's the way the Democrats are. Much of which will go to Michigan State University and this New York nonprofit that's run by a bunch of Democrats, far left people. And we'll get into that more in the coming weeks. But and it's a very political thing they're doing. But that isn't TANF money. The 250 million isn't TANF money. So more and more tax dollars is going to go to illegal aliens. I don't believe that we should be coming up with welfare programs to attract more illegal aliens to our state. I fully support what President Trump has been saying about cutting off funding for cities and states that have sanctuary policies. I will remind you that we passed legislation in May of last year to take away the revenue sharing from sanctuary cities in Michigan. And I think that it'd be wise for the Democrat Senate and Governor Whitmer to enact that, pass it into law before Michigan is penalized for having the sanctuary city of East Lansing. I mean, the Democrats are putting our state and city funding in jeopardy by not acting on that policy. Nobody wants sanctuary policies that are giving refuge to illegal aliens by not enforcing our laws. We don't want more lawlessness in East Lansing and Ingham County. I mean, this is a very dangerous place around here. And we want to work with ICE. We want to ban the sanctuary cities so we don't have to worry about our state and our city funding being in jeopardy. I mean, you saw their rural health application, and I think there was a hearing on that today. They left a lot of money on the table. The Whitmer administration jeopardized our rural health care funding, our rural hospital funding, They were criticized by the Michigan Hospital Association. Brian Peters, not a guy I like, but he criticized the Whitmer administration, and he finally admitted that the purpose of the One Big Beautiful Bill was to put $250 million into our rural hospitals. I think the Whitmer administration got about $173 million. They didn't adopt the model MAHA policies, and that we can't get that back. They jeopardized tens of millions of dollars in rural healthcare funding. Now, I think we can work to strengthen our application next year by making our rural health application sustainable and having oversight. What the Democrats are doing, and I think the reason that Brian Peters is criticizing them, they came up, let's just spend the money for as long as it's there, and then we have no plan what to do after that in 3 years or whatever it is. They want a plan to be sustainable, and they want oversight. And that's how you get all the rural health funding, and they want it to go to our rural hospitals. And they want us to adopt healthier policies, things like banning the dyes, getting rid of the soft drinks on the SNAP program, many things, even the whole milk, having the whole milk in schools. So, we're going to do what we can to push this administration to get the maximum rural health funding in the future, just like we're going to push them to make sure our federal funding's not at risk on the sanctuary cities. So anyway, I thought it was a very good opinion. There's so much waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget, and now we're going to get that accounting. I really think what Sarah Anthony did was not smart. I think we would have this deal worked out much quicker if we didn't have all this legal fighting. Because of Sarah Anthony, a lot of these programs are going to be in jeopardy longer. But ultimately, we'll get a deal. We'll make a deal on the supplemental. It'll have to go through HEAT, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan, something the Democrats don't want. They don't want it to go through HEAT, because what would HEAT do? HEAT would tell us what is the completion date, right? A lot of these projects, they're telling us now after the fact, well, it was supposed to be a 3-year project. It was only in the budget for 1 year. Okay. Well, when they're just shoving it in the last 5 minutes and they don't know what it is, I've sat in these meetings and they don't have a clue what these things are they're putting in the budget. If you have to disclose 45 days out, hey, this is a 3-year project, don't you think that would increase the chances of us putting it in the budget as a 3-year project? Instead of what Tate and the Democrats did, they put it in as a 1-year project. So HEAT is going to help us with that. The 3-year projects will get funded as 3-year projects. They'll never go through this process. But a lot of this money is waste, fraud, and abuse, and you saw it with the tampons in all the government bathrooms. You saw it with the illegal alien welfare benefits, RX Kids, all of the Biden-era climate programs. We killed all that. So we're rooting out this waste, fraud, and abuse. And by the way, don't you think the Democrats should be happy? They have a $1.2 billion budget shortfall. I just found them $600 million that wasn't spent from last year. Don't you think a good portion of that would help them prevent some of these cuts they're so afraid of? So I think when it's all over, everyone is going to say the House Republicans and Speaker Hall did the right thing, cutting this, getting an accounting, cutting out the waste, fraud, and abuse, and using it to prevent much bigger cuts to existing programs and services. So hopefully we report it that way. I think I'll stop there, open it up if there are any questions. So hopefully everybody got all that. Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
I'm a little bit confused with your messaging here. So you guys cut that $645 million. You're in need of $1.2 billion for the coming year.
Right.
But you're talking about negotiating a supplemental before you even have to make this cut. So why are you even entertaining supplemental?
Well, there could be some things in there that are needed, out of the $600 million. I mean, there's a handful of them that are probably needed, so you spend some of it. But remember, when we cut it, so I want to lay this out. So, you guys focus a lot on the pork spending, which I appreciate. But the pork spending is just part of it, okay? Most of it was department cuts and economic development cuts. That's what most of it was, through the Make It in Michigan Fund, which was the Biden-era program that Whitmer created to do matching funds for the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, all of those Biden programs. We cut that too, okay? So, but, you know, the problem is, let's say 80% of the pork projects are bad and 20% of them are good, or whatever it is. Well, you had to cut the whole line item. So you cut the bad ones and the good ones, and maybe we'll put the good ones back in, but we need an accounting. We need to know what is they actually put out the door and what they haven't. But let's say, you know, the 600 million, let's say 200 million of it we carry over into the next budget. That's a pretty significant part of that cut that doesn't have to be made. That's my point, right? I mean, because remember, they don't have any pork money this time. They have zero. I mean, they're going to have to cut 800 million from departments. You know, so this is going to be hard for them. And I'm just saying, wouldn't you be happy if you have some portion of the 600 million to plug the hole? Because what they were going to do was put it in a slush fund for 5 years. So essentially, we take the 600 million, we put it in a slush fund for 5 years, and then we say, we don't have the money, so we're going to have to raise taxes or take it from the rainy day fund. It's like, well, what about the 600 million you didn't spend last year? Let's take as much of that as possible and move it into the next year. So that's what I'm trying to say. Can you, so what is there a hole that you're seeing that you want to?
No, you jumped from saying we have to cut 800 million from departments, and we're negotiating a supplemental money.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate you asking me to clarify that. My point is, we're not going to give the 600 million back, but maybe we'll do 100 million, and then we'll keep the other 500 million, and that'll be really helpful with the budget hole. It just depends. I mean, we don't have an accounting.
600 million a little bit further, because 600 million, 645 million,
Yeah,
650 million.
yeah.
But then the preliminary injunction only applied to the funds that weren't encumbered before September 15th. And, you know, the department said about 70% of that was encumbered before September 15th.
They also said
50%. Which means like around 200 million was maybe not spent. So that doesn't fill that hole either.
Yeah, and this is the point that I made right at the beginning, and I'm going to say it again. They need to give us an accounting, right? I think the biggest problem here is the Whitmer administration doesn't have a clue how much money there is. They don't know what they've encumbered. They don't know what they haven't encumbered. And we're in February, and they should have known this information in November when they gave it to us. And they're making $800 million a year of interest off this money. It's out of control. We need better financial practices. And I think that's what came across in Judge Godola. He's saying, why are you work projecting this if it's encumbered? And they don't have an answer for that. So the reason that we needed a preliminary injunction is because I just say it's pretty clear to me they're trying to shove as much of this money out of the door. Now we got the preliminary injunction. We need an accounting, right? So the best number we have is the 645 million. That's the best number we have. At one point they said 50% encumbered. At one point they said 70% encumbered. When they gave it to us, none of it was encumbered. So, you know, we need the answers from them, and and if we had better record keeping from them and better transparency from them, that would affect the way that we did this. But for people to say, because their records are incomplete, we should just approve their work, that's ridiculous. That's not doing our job.
Well, but then to say that this will help solve the budget shortfall but you don't know how much money there is to work with.
If there was $1, it would help us with the budget hole. I think we can all agree on that. And I think we can all agree it's much more than $1. So whether it's 100 million or 600 million, whatever we can get from last year, remember what they were going to do with this. They were going to put this into a slush fund. And then they were going to tell us we need to take it from the rainy day fund or we need to raise taxes. And we're just saying, you have $12 billion probably now in the slush fund. It was 10 and they asked for 2. I mean, who knows? Every time I ask, it's another billion, by the way. But whatever it is, it's between 10 and 12 billion in the slush fund. That's work projected for 5 years. We got 600 million now that we can apply to that. And I think it's going to do better for the state.
What's wrong with using the rainy day fund money?
Because we made a deliberate choice to put ourselves in this position. I mean, we decided that we needed to have better use of tax dollars, that we needed to set priorities in government, and that we needed to return more money to the taxpayers. And that's why in the budget deal, we did no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, and we permanently dedicated general fund spending, which mostly goes to departments, to roads. Then for the Democrats in the Senate to start saying, well, we need the rainy day fund. Well, we need a rainy day fund for a problem that we all deliberately caused. We wanted to give more money back to the people through no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. We wanted to set priorities for government. We made the deal. If you guys agree to the tax increase, if we agree to your tax increase, you must cut waste, fraud, and abuse from the departments. I mean, that was the deal we made. And then for them to say, the Senate Democrats to say, well, I don't know how we got in this situation. We need a rainy day fund. The rainy day fund is supposed to be for an actual emergency, an economic downturn. We heard Rachel Eubanks point out what the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference said, which was Michigan's economy is stable. We don't have an economic problem in Michigan based on the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference and based on the comments of the Whitmer administration. Both Jen Flood and Rachel Eubanks said that. You guys quoted them. I just give them credit for being honest rather than blaming President Trump, because that is what they said. So now we have to see through this vision of the deal we made, which was to make those cuts this coming year and make those cuts the next year and start right-sizing government and getting better value for your dollars. That's why we shouldn't use the rainy day fund. Now, they can't see past the pork, so it's possible Sarah Anthony just found this out. And I'll say through the, I thought Judge Godola really brought up some great points. He's a very sharp judge, very fair, and he pointed out if you start tinkering with this work project law, you're going to start tinkering with all budget transfers. And I don't think that's somewhere Sarah Anthony or the Whitmer administration want to go because they really like those budget transfers. And I think what Sarah Anthony did, not only did it jeopardize the spending for longer, but it risks taking a lot of power away from the legislature. So I think when she looks back on it, she's going to realize she made a mistake.
So, Speaker, if there's $645 million of work projects, how much of that do you feel will be restored as part of negotiations? Do you have a limit to how much you think can be restored, if any?
Well, I think it'll be a smaller number.
50, 200?
I don't know. I mean, that could be high.
Okay.
I just think, there's some programs that could be justified. I mean, we've heard some of them, but we also need that accounting. So I think it'll be a small number, but I do support doing a book closing supplemental, assuming that there's enough money left. Now, if the Whitmer administration did really take $400 million and commit it, then my guess is most of the things that you guys are writing about are not a problem. Do you know what I mean? And if that turns out to be the case, then we won't do a supplemental. If it's $200 million, we won't do a supplemental. You can just work that through the budget, and then we'll use that $200 million to repair the hole. My guess is it's much more than that. I think this attorney and this Whitmer administration, they have no idea what's encumbered and what's not encumbered. But thankfully, Judge Godola, I think, is going to have them produce something so we can all go from there. And then we need to strengthen the state law in the future. I mean, again, the benefit of this is going to be in the future with heat. We're going to know in advance what the multi-year programs are. We'll be able to negotiate those out earlier. We're gonna know what all the pork is before it goes in, so we'll enter it with better understanding and expectations. And ultimately, we're gonna have to do something in the law that forces the administration to give an accurate accounting on the back end of this. So that way you can make the decisions and there's not all this confusion about what's encumbered, what's not encumbered. I mean, there's no excuse in February. We can't produce on September 15th what was encumbered. It's ridiculous. And truthfully, that's something the media should be hammering them on more. Because again, what the media is saying is, you know, House stupid or House Republicans, they did something without all of the numbers, right? That's what the media says. You say, wait a minute, how is the Whitmer administration allowed to not account for $600 million of taxpayer dollars? How do they get away with that? And if 100 million of the 600 million is waste, fraud, and abuse, do you approve it? I mean, do you approve, you know, we go through the pork, right? If one or two of those pork projects are questionable, do you approve the whole line? And we're saying slow down, justify the projects, go through heat, and we'll restore the good ones. But we're not going to restore all this waste, fraud, and abuse. And then when the CREC comes out, I just can't believe the Democrats aren't saying, thank you, Speaker Hall. We need this money. Thank you. Rather than keep it in a bank account for 5 years, thank you. Now we can actually use it to not make as drastic cuts in the budget. Yeah, go ahead, Remington. Great job you're doing, Remington.
Thank you. Leave it to the TV reporter to ask an off-the-wall question, but today Senate Democrats unleashed a plan of a package of bills to further regulate social media in regards to protecting children. What, in your eyes, should that legislation look like? What would you support in terms of regulating social media when it comes to children?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. You know, I saw, you know, Winnie Brinks wouldn't speak to you in your year-end interview. I did a year-end interview with you, and if you watch it, it was a very good one. And right at the end, you said, I asked Winnie Brinks to do the same, and she would not do it. And so I would know a lot more about this plan if she would have been on your show, because I went on your show and I laid out our plans for 2026. She didn't do that. You had to say, Winnie Brinks would not speak to us. And hey, Jeff, what's the one I just saw where the same thing happened? Oh, the RX Kids story. Winnie Brinks would not make herself available to the Detroit News to discuss her #1 priority in the budget. So, you know, it is what it is. So we'll learn about it. You know, I'm happy to see that Winnie Brinks is finally offering some idea. You know, we've been laying out our vision. You're going to see even more laid out. And hopefully everybody saw that letter that I sent Governor Whitmer. I put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate you some of the reporting on it. You know, we have a real opportunity ahead to work on literacy with Governor Whitmer. I was very pleased to see this Democrat State Board of Education issue this report talking about strengthening our literacy law. I looked through their recommendations. A lot of their recommendations are very similar to some of the ideas that Nancy DeBoer and the House Republicans are working on. So I'm really encouraged that we have an opportunity to strengthen our literacy law and our science of reading laws, and that could be a bipartisan issue. So I was very pleased. You know, I think we get to celebrate, hopefully, this cell phone ban. They tell me the Senate's going to do that. Have they done it yet? Does anyone know? Tomorrow? So, okay, hopefully that happens tomorrow. You know, I looked at it. I mean, we got roads done, even though she probably only gets 20% of the credit, according to the story. We got roads done. We got no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. We made the budget smaller than last year. We cut waste, fraud, and abuse. We worked together on a new fighter mission for Michigan, and now this year we're going to work together on literacy and hopefully healthcare affordability and property tax affordability. So I'm really excited about that opportunity on February 25th when the governor comes. You know, we'll look at Winnie Brinks' ideas. We want our kids to be safe online. It's really important. And so we'll look at her plan, but this is the first time she's letting anyone know about it. So we're all going to have to look at it.
In the Today, the House, at least from the agenda that I saw, is going to vote on those restrictions for the Attorney General when it comes to what cases you can intervene in on the local level. What are your thoughts on those bills?
Well, this Attorney General is out of control. I mean, you saw Judge Goodall very quickly put a preliminary injunction in place because her opinion was so wacky on this recent case. He said it's very likely the Republicans are going to prevail on this. I mean, she spends a lot of time going after her political opponents, but very little time winning cases. She sues President Trump, seems like every day. Often without the backing of the Democrat administration here. So we need to just rein in this out-of-control Attorney General. We need to rein her in, and we want her to focus on the important things like consumer protection, a very important thing. And so our hope is through the legislation we're moving today, we're going to rein her in. She's really out of control. And I will say, too, we did the MSP report. Hopefully everyone read that. We've been working on that for quite some time. They interviewed some people under oath in these depositions. I think they found a lot of new information there. And I think it's just a testimony to the quality of work that the Oversight Committee is doing and how they've stepped it up to the next level. And I think we'll be seeing more reports soon. But you know, we had attempted to get this out earlier. You know, we saw the resignation that occurred. I know a lot of people were hearing that this report was coming out. So I was happy we finally got it out. I believe, was it yesterday? And the public can really see the problems and the cause of those problems going on at the Michigan State Police. And it's very clear from the recommendations of the House Oversight Committee and what they discovered in their investigation that this person, Brimacombe, is to blame, along with the director. And so I think it's very warranted that she won't be there any longer. But it was a great report, and I appreciate everyone reading it and evaluating it and continuing to ask questions about the state police as we're trying to restore that state police to one of the greatest police forces in the country, something it used to be. It's not now because of the leadership there, but with this second in command, Brimacombe, leaving, I think it'll get better. Yeah.
So you're going to endorse in the governor's race?
I'm not going to endorse until President Trump makes a decision, and then I'll consider based on what President Trump's endorsement is. I think I've endorsed every time President Trump's endorsed. I don't expect to make a decision without seeing what President Trump, what his view is. Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Secretary Benson, in her campaign for governor, has said that she would freeze utility rates for folks in Michigan. She would be governor. Saw the New Jersey governor yesterday do that in office. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think utility rates should be frozen?
So she said that she would freeze utility rates as governor. And how would she do that? Is that through the Public Service Commission, or did she?
Well, I think, I don't have a full total understanding of how she would do it, but I think that she does have like emergency powers, so she could use it.
Oh, I see.
And that's what they did in New Jersey.
They did that where?
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey, okay. Well, I think we need to look at what is bringing the cost to the utility rates. In this case, the cost is being driven by the investments that they're making. I mean, they have to make big investments in order to build all of these data centers and to power the data centers. I mean, I've heard estimates. I think, Simon, didn't you say it was like 22 or 25% of one of their capacity, one of these data centers? Or what is the number you have? Do you know? Okay. Do one of you have a number, like an estimate? One of these data centers is what percentage of their capacity?
Oh.
Maybe it was Colin that said that, but one of you guys said it's like 20-some%. I had heard 10%, but it's between 10 and say 25% of the total capacity of DTE, I think, is this one data center. So you need to build more natural gas plants. And that's really what the Democrats are mad about. They say it's other reasons, but they're a little concerned about the water. Most people say the water is actually not that big of a deal, that it doesn't use that much water. But certainly it uses a lot of power, and there's no way to do the wind and solar. You cannot do the wind and solar mandates. You have to build new plants. And so a lot of people are looking at this and seeing Jocelyn Benson's husband pushing for this plant. And there's a lot of concern that Jocelyn Benson will not oversee this properly through her committees and commissions and officers, and that rate increase is going to get spread onto the ratepayers. There's a very legitimate concern there. Yeah.
Moratorium on data centers? I saw that there was, you don't?
No, I don't support a moratorium on data centers. I don't. But I do think that, I think we need the data centers, but we need local input, and we need to be very confident that they're not going to raise prices for the ratepayers. I don't have confidence in Governor Whitmer's Public Service Commission. I don't have confidence in Quentin Messer to hold these data centers accountable. And then they're going to get these huge tax breaks, which I did vote against, and that's why they're all coming here at once. But just to the question, I think that in general, the consensus position is that the wind and solar mandates are going to force huge increases on our utility bills. It's the consensus position now. Even the ones that were saying a year ago that I was wrong on that are now admitting it is going to significantly raise rates. If you're forced to build all these windmills and solar panels, it is going to raise rates and the cost. So then we have an unfair tax law in Michigan that every time that the investment is made in the grid, we keep saying, improve the grid, improve the grid. And they say, okay, we will improve the grid, but it's going to raise your rates because the tax bill is so high. The tax bill that the Democrats won't repeal, that this tax law discourages investment through the personal property tax. What the personal property tax says, and they got rid of this for manufacturing plants for this reason, if you make investments, your tax bill goes way up. So we've got to look at the costs here. You can't just, in this case, I don't think we can just freeze the rate. I think we've really got to look at these cost drivers, and we've got to lower the costs. And then when we lower the costs, I think we should couple that with forced rollbacks in the prices. So I don't think you can just freeze the price. I think you've got to lower their costs, look at their financials, and lower their costs, and then force them to give you those rate rollbacks. And that's how you do it.
Do you think the legislature can do that objectively when DTE and cities are spending so much on legislative races?
I think I can do it objectively, and I've shown that I've been able to lead them. I'll tell you, I've looked at this. The utilities, their giving is very even, if not weighted toward the Democrats. So I look at it, and you guys report all these numbers, but if you look at their giving, it's very weighted toward the Democrats. So they give money to me, right? They give money to House Republicans, but their giving is very weighted toward the Democrats. And I think that many of you have reported on that over and over. If you look at what they gave to Tate, what they give to Whitmer, what they gave to Brinks, you look at what they give to the Michigan Democrat Party, you look at what they give to their, what is their fund called? What is it? You remember their fund that they all use as a, their, no, the fund the Democrats use. They have the C4.
21st century.
Yeah, 21st century, all of that. If you totaled that all up, they give heavily to the Democrats. So I don't view it as something that influences us because they give so much to the Democrats. I mean, I kind of wonder, what if they just didn't give to anybody? It'd be a wash. You know what I mean? You give to everybody, and it's say they give $1 million to this side and $1 million to this side, what's the difference between that and them not giving? You know what I mean? It's a wash. But it's not going to influence what we're doing at all.
Both parties, if the intent from an interest group is to maintain the status quo, giving to both parties is probably the best strategy to ensure that happens.
Well, I'll just say I looked at a lot of these organizations, and when we were in the Democrat trifecta, they picked the Democrats, right? And remember, it was the Democrats that were going to slit their throats, and all these business groups sided with the Democrats. And so, that's what they decided to do, and I think it was a very dumb thing. Or they gave parity, and I think parity is stupid when one side wants to destroy you, and the other side is actually advocating for policies that are going to grow the economy. But, a lot of these big corporations are very woke, and you see that in their giving. It's an unfortunate thing. They're very dumb when it comes to their giving, but we do the things we do based on what the right thing to do is. I'll tell you, when I was in minority and I lived through that and I saw firsthand the way that this really works up here, I said, I don't give a shit about this. We're going to go and do the right thing, and I don't care if they give to me or not. And the funny thing is, I raise more money than anybody, and I don't give a shit about what these people think, and they donate more to me. It's unbelievable. And, it's kind of like what we did on the survey, the MERS survey, right? I come up here and rail against the lobbyists every week, and then the lobbyists voted me the most effective House member of the year, or whatever it was. And you know what it is? Because these people, they are lobbyists, and for that reason, they should be suspect. But they also care about roads, and they care about ethics and accountability, and they've seen firsthand the corruption that's going on in the budget process. And they're saying, thank God there's a leader that's actually standing up, restoring power between the legislative branch and the executive branch, and doing the right things without giving a shit what the donors and the lobbyists think, right? And they say, hey, I respect it, right? He's not helping me in my job, but I'm going to vote for him. He's doing a good job. And that's the only way. You look, I had the highest approval rating I think that any House member has had in his survey, and you say, why are they saying? They're giving me a high approval rating because they respect what I'm doing, even though it doesn't help them. And it's like you guys, right? All of you guys, I watch your shows, and you said, Speaker Hall is dominating this year. And you guys don't, in order for you to say that, I have to win the year by like 100%. If I win the year by 10%, you guys would never give me that credit. I have to win it by like 100%. Well, it's the same way with the lobbyists. So I'm very proud when I accept that award in a few days, Kyle. I'm very excited. What?
Today, if you want.
Wow, that would be something. And I win a lot of your awards. You're going to find out about a couple more, but I'm not going to spoil it yet because they're embargoed. Any other questions?
Do you disagree with the Trump administration's forcing the J.H. Campbell coal plant to remain open since its cost ratepayers more than $115 million over the past year? I mean, it's slightly close to it.
No, I actually sent the Trump administration a letter asking them to do it. Yes, along with Luke Meerman and David Preston, and I was very appreciative that they considered that letter and everything else, and we saw the Secretary of Energy come out and keep it open because if you talk to experts on this, people like David Preston, they'll tell you the Midwest has a problem with its baseload energy, and this is a really critical piece of that, and we need it going. So we were very happy to see them keeping that coal plant open, and I hope they continue to keep it open. This is just another example of President Trump taking what Michigan leaders are saying and doing it. I've never seen anything like it. He's doing a great job.
Close it, and it's directly leading to increase in electric costs for ratepayers.
I mean, the utilities want to close it probably because they're trying to meet the wind and solar mandates. They come up with other reasons, but they probably want to close it because of the wind and solar mandates. And I respect, and listen, right? I listen to them, I talk to them, I want to hear their input. We want the utilities to continue to provide affordable and reliable energy. But I believe they just don't. This was a way of changing their portfolio to meet the aggressive wind and solar mandates. I mean, remember, the law they passed will basically ban coal plants by 2040. So they don't want that. They want other things, and they want subsidies to do it. Anything else? All right, well, hopefully we have a good session today. We got hope, and you got a little bit out of that, I hope. Hope you got a little. And then I hope everybody listens to my podcast appearance today on a great show. It's called It's Just Politics with Rick Pluta and Zoe Clark, very respected journalists. And I encourage people to take the survey on their website. If you notice, there's a picture of me, there's a picture of Duggan, there's a picture of Governor Whitmer, picture of John James and Benson. That's it. And you click the survey, and you can give them more about their show, more that you want to see on their show. So, you know, hopefully everybody participates. It was a really good interview. I thought the Gongwer interview was one of the best I've done. This one is better. I think they're not going to publish the whole thing, though. What do you think, Jeff? They'd probably take a couple things out of my brains. What do you think? Yeah. Well, everyone watch it. It was a good one. All right. Thanks. Take mine.